Hi, welcome back to Golf Training Hacks. In this video, we're going to help you stop standing up at impact. It's a common problem. You see it a lot. Instead of staying compressed into the ground at your impact point, we stand up, we lose all kinds of power, it changes the spine angle, and we don't get a good shot. So what's happening when we stand up too early at impact? Well, there are a few things. Now, at Golf Training Hacks, we're always talking about keeping a consistent spine angle throughout your swing. And that also means keeping a consistent hip position. And the position that we're talking about is basically the position that you set at address. So at address, you want to set a neutral spine, which is some extension in your lower back, some flexion in your upper back, and some extension in your cervical spine. So once you set your neutral spine, you set your hips back into a hip hinge. So that's essentially the position that you're going to establish at address. That spine angle and hip position that you set at address is what you want to keep from your backswing into impact. Now we're going to take this from your maximum leg position. So here's your maximum leg position as you're rotating into the shot. Now at this position, we're still in this hip hinge position. Now, as we're coming through the shot and coming into the impact point, we are still in this compressed position with a hip hinge and your belt buckle to the ball. It's not until you release your leg out in front of impact, roughly 45 degrees or so, where this front side fully extends. So you're not fully extending at impact, you're fully extending as you're releasing leg through the impact point, and this front side ankle, knee, hip, and shoulder go into one line, and your hip fully extends and it's going backwards. So you're not coming out, it's fully extending and going backwards. Now that's going to help you with consistency because your spine angle isn't changing. If you're standing up at impact, if that's where you started and you're standing up, then you change your spine angle and you're adding variability to the shot. The other thing that happens when you stand up is you are really closing down the window of opportunity to get a solid shot. Because as you are standing up and this club is coming down in its arc, if you're standing up and let's say flipping at the ball because you have to gain some distance, as this arc begins to come closer to the ball, it has to, as you're standing up, it has to meet the ball in a very small window because the arc is just coming down in a big circle. Nothing is flattening out at the bottom. Now, if you are from your maximum leg position, if you stay in this compressed position as you're rotating through, as the club, and this is a bit of exaggeration, but as the club begins to get close to impact and you stay in this position, it's flattening out and then raising up and back. And holding off that extension, again, this is exaggerated, as the club comes into the impact point and you stay in this position, it's flattening out at the bottom and then it's releasing out in the front. So it gives you more opportunity to get a clean hit because the bottom of that arc is flatter versus when you are flipping at it and the bottom of that arc is much more circular and you have a very small area to hit versus basically dragging that club flat along the ground for a while and your margin of error is a little wider. So you really want to be staying into that shot with your hip hinge, staying compressed, getting power from the ground. So in the next video, we're going to give you some exercises to help you do that. So let's get started. In this exercise video, I'm going to give you a couple of basic exercises to help you improve your ability to resist the forces in a golf swing. So we want to keep a neutral, stable spine throughout our golf swing. So that means we want to keep some extension in our lower back, some flexion in our upper back, and some extension in our cervical spine. So we're going to set up to a pulley system. You could either use a pulley system at the gym, or if you're at home, if you have something like this, or you can use, two pulleys like this attached to something. So what you want to do is you want to set up as if you're in your address. So you're going to hip hinge back, tilt a little bit forward. You're going to keep that neutral spine throughout your position. All right, so when you set up for your address, set your neutral spine, you hip hinge back, and you tilt a little forward so that your belt buckle is pointed to impact. And what you're going to do then is just either isometrically hold this position for a count. 1 1000, 2 1000, 3 1000, 4 1000, 5 1000. Or you could do it in reps. But what you don't want to do is have movement in your back. So it shouldn't look like this, where you're moving around. It should be very stable. And if you're pulling, you shouldn't be rocking like that. So if you're going to use the repetition method, you're going to keep your hips stable, your spine stable, and you're just going to pull. If you're going to use isometrics, you're just going to hold. But you could do this with 2 arms or 1 arm. Now when you're holding 2 arms, you are basically just resisting forward flexion. So as this weight gets harder and harder to keep control of here or here, you're resisting this. When you have 1 arm, so if I'm going to use this now, it's the same idea. I'm going to set up neutral spine, hip hinge back, belt buckle to the point of impact, and I'm going to pull and hold this position. 1 1000, 2 1000, 3 1000, 4 1000, 5 1000. I go to this side, neutral spine, hip hinge back, belt buckle to impact. I'm in my address position. 1 1000, 2 1000, 3 1000, 4 1000, 5 1000. Or I could again do this for reps, but what's happening here is now I'm resisting forward flexion and rotation. Okay, so that's resisting this type of movement. So when you use 1 arm, you're resisting rotation and forward flexion. When you're using 2, you're basically resisting your need to flex forward. You can also deadlift using pulleys. You're going to use the same technique that you would use if you were lifting a barbell. Now I have the handles by my side. I set a neutral spine. My feet are parallel. My feet are shoulder width. Hip hinge back, down, and up. So you want some tension on this because you want to feel like you're being pulled back. And I'm keeping a neutral spine through the whole movement. So that's how you can deadlift with pulleys. In this exercise sequence, we're going to show you some basic exercises to improve your hip strength, and in particular your glute max strength, because to get that forward side to extend and drive through impact, you need to extend the forward hip, and that's glute max strength. But you also need hip complex strength so you don't swing and gliding back and forth over either your rear side foot or your front side foot. So the first one, again, this is going to be some basic exercises. I'm sure you guys have seen this. Cheryl's going to do a hip bridge. We're going to hold it isometrically. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you're going to release, come back up. We'll do 3 reps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and release. And come back up again. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and release. Okay, so you don't have to hold it for 5 seconds. You could hold it for 10, 15, 20, a minute. You know, it's up to you. It's based on your capabilities. The second type of hip bridge, and we use these a lot, is a hip bridge with single leg movement. Now in this case, Cheryl's just going to do a hip bridge with a single leg pump, which is just an open movement. So she's going to come up and she's going to pump her leg back and forth 3 times. 1, 2, and 3. Good. So that's a beginning of our hip bridge sequence. It's some basic exercises to begin to get you some strength in your glute max in particular here, because you need that to extend that front hip so you're not swaying it out towards the target. In this exercise segment, we're going to help you work on isometric strength in your hips. Now, you need isometric strength in your hips to stop lateral glide. You need to be able to stop the rotational forces and the lateral forces as you swing a golf club, and those forces are high. Isometric strength is what you need to help you stop doing that. Now, we're going to start with a hip bridge. So I think you all know what a hip bridge is. Cheryl's going to do one. That's a basic hip bridge, right? And come on down. But we're going to change it up in that we're going to do a hip bridge with single leg movements. Now the first movement we're going to do is a hip bridge into what we call a single leg concentric push. So let's go into a hip bridge. Cheryl's going to put her leg up, and now she's going to push into my hand, and I'm going to release, and it's going to go back. Now she could come out of this now if she wants to come down. If you don't want to hold the hip bridge throughout this, you can. You come back up, she's going to push into my hand and come back down, and one more, go down and up, push into my hand and come back down, okay? That's a hip bridge with a single leg concentric push. But here's where we're going to change it up a little bit. We're going to put an isometric contraction at the end of the push. So this is a hip bridge with a single leg concentric push with an isometric contraction at the end. All right, so Cheryl's going to come up into a hip bridge, and now we're going to push, and we're going to go into an isometric contraction. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, release, push, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, release, and push, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and release. Okay, so that's a hip bridge with a single leg concentric push and an isometric contraction at the end.